So obviously it is a super groovy little progression. Guys, this lesson comes with a free backing track, so be sure to download that. It also comes with the lesson sheet. The lesson sheet is downloadable for all of our members. And actually in the beginner lesson, one of our members asked about, can you change the key? And yes, this will be available in the Smart Sheet Music when you download the Smart Sheet, when you look at the Smart Sheet Music at Piano with Jonny. There is, on the right side, you can click Settings and change the key. So you can actually try this lesson in different keys. I want to dive into the lesson. You guys ready? You guys buckled up? You're sitting at your keyboards? Whew, we got a lot to cover. All right, circular progression number one. What is a circular progression? A circular progression is a progression that repeats itself, meaning the chords loop back around, okay? If you take chords and you look at the way chords move, like a G7 moves to a C, right? And a C7 moves to an F, right? And an F7 moves to a B flat. There's this idea in music of a 5-to-1 relationship, right? And if you go all the way around the circle of fifths, like a C is the 5 of F, right? So it would go this way for you guys. And then F is the 5 of B flat, that would go this way. If you keep going, you end up back to the chord you started, okay? So if you look at the circle of fifths, that is a circular progression. But in music, you can have shorter circular progressions where the chords harmonically loop you back to that first chord. One of the most common circular progressions is the turnaround progression, or the progression used in I've Got Rhythm. Called rhythm changes or turnaround, but this progression wants to repeat itself. Okay, that's a turnaround. That's a circular progression. The one you're going to learn today is used in a lot of gospel music. It's used in a lot of funk music, and it's one of the most important to learn. I call it circular progression 1. That's just the name I gave it. You're going to learn many of these. We're going to be adding more circular progressions, but I think this is one of the most important ones. The way we're going to do this lesson, guys, quick overview. We actually did, I think, an overview in the lesson that I was streaming to the wrong group. But let's do a quick overview now. What you're going to be learning, guys, is this very basic melody. We're going to talk about the basic chords. I'm going to show you a very cool groove that you can use. We're going to talk about all these beautiful jazzy colors that you can add to the chords. We're going to talk about a left-hand improv accompaniment. This is a very cool little groovy pattern you can use while you're soloing. And then we're going to do a deep dive into soloing. We're going to spend a lot of time in this lesson talking about how to solo. And I love this lesson because it's really geared toward many playing levels, meaning if you're more on the intermediate side or you're not super accomplished in jazz, you can solo with one scale, which is the blues scale. We talked at length about this in the beginner advanced or beginner intermediate lesson. But we're going to cover this. We're going to also take a 2-scale approach, which is, hey, you can solo over this whole progression using just 2 scales, and we're going to talk about that. And then the hardest approach is a multi-scale approach, where you're going to learn 6 different scales that you can use to solo over this progression, okay? And these are much more jazzy scales. So there's 3 options depending on your playing level. So guys, let's buckle up, let's do this, let's dive in, and let's learn the gospel light progression. I made this up because it's in a lot of gospel music. Okay, very gospel-y kind of progression. Let's first talk about this melody. I'm going to walk you through quickly the progression. First things first, we're swinging this. Okay, so we have a swung 8th note marking. 2 8th notes equals this is a swing rhythm here. Make sure you understand that. Let's talk about the melody. Bum, 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 bum. That's your melody, okay? Twice on the A. Now G, E, D, C. Okay? Bum, 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 bum. It's almost so easy that you don't have to even look at the sheet music, okay? You could just sort of play it by ear. The rhythm here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, that's syncopated, 3 and 4 and 1. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Very simple melody. By the way, we're going to move along quickly here. If you guys need to review any of this stuff, you can watch the pre-recorded lesson. the archived lesson. Let's talk next about these chords, guys. We're starting on an F major, and I didn't really go into the theory as to why these chords work, but or in the beginner lesson I didn't talk about the theory. I do want to talk about it now and talk about why these chords relate to each other. Let's first start off by learning the chords. The first chord is an F major 7. These are root position chords, F major 7. We're going to use F, A, C, and E. Okay? Standard major 7 chord, now to an E dominant 7, E, G sharp, B, and D. This is actually not notated correctly. This will be fixed. I'll make sure to fix this and update the lesson sheet, but this should be E, G sharp, B, and D. That's an E dominant 7 chord. Next chord is an A minor 7 down here, A, C, E, and G. That's an A minor 7, standard minor 7 chord. A flat dominant 7, A flat, C, E flat, G flat, G minor 7, G, B flat, D, and F, and a G flat dominant 7. Okay, this is your standard. This is your basic harmonic structure of the tune. You should be able to play these root position chords fairly easily, being able to jump to each chord. Okay, if you're not familiar with these chords, I do spend a little more time in the beginner lesson talking about how these chords work. But if you're an intermediate advanced student, you probably have some knowledge of your major, minor, and your dominant 7th chords. Okay? If you don't know your chords as well, we have lessons where I walk you through these chords in the Smart Sheet Music, and we're also developing actual lessons, courses at Piano with Jonny in the Fundamentals Roadmap where you learn these chords. Okay, so F major 7 once more, E7, A flat, dominant 7, G minor 7, and G flat 7. Okay? This is your chord progression. Now, I want to talk about why this is a circular progression. Okay, we're starting on an F major chord. Okay, what's going to happen is this series of chords back here is going to point you back to this F major 7. G flat is the tritone substitute. There's a term in jazz called the tritone substitute of a C7. Okay, G flat is the tritone of a C, and there's this term in jazz where the C7 and the G flat 7 are tritone are substitute chords for each other, and they're linked by this tritone relationship. Okay? Now, if you go with this principle of a 5 leading to a 1, a C leading to an F, C is the 5 of an F, and if G flat is the tritone, G flat leads to an F. Does that make sense? Okay. Just want to give you a basic understanding here. So G flat is the tritone of C. We know C leads to an F. Okay. Well, what leads to a C? What's the 5 of C? It's a G. G is the 5 of C. So that's why we have a G flat, G minor chord. What's the 5 of a G? It would be a D. D is the 5th of G. But instead of using a D, we're going to use the tritone, which is an A flat. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have to go back to this 5-1 relationship as to why chords progress, and then we're using tritones as substitute chords. Okay, so we could use a D here, or we could use an A flat here, but I chose to use an A flat. What leads to a D? What's the 5 of D? It's an A. There's your A minor. Is this making sense to you? So this is why these chords lead back to an F major. What's the 5 of an A? It's an E. There's your E. Okay, so we have this 5-1 relationship. Essentially, E is the 5 of A is the 5 of D. We used an A flat 7 as a tritone substitute. G is the 5 of D, and then C, or G is the 5 of C, and we used the G flat tritone substitute. If this makes no sense, don't worry. It may make sense to some of you. Hopefully those of you with a little more advanced theory knowledge will go, hey, that makes sense. But this is why it's a circular progression, is these chords, this chord progression essentially leads you back, this whole progression leads you back to an F, okay? By the way, you guys can ask questions during the lesson. That's the whole idea of these live lessons. I could just record this on my own, but I want to be able to answer your questions as we go. Cool. You guys look great. I don't see any super pressing questions. Brenda, do you have a lesson on I Got Love that you just sample played? Oh, I Got Rhythm. That's what you're asking. I don't have a lesson on that, although I do have an arrangement of that, which you can get on musicnotes.com. And by the way, all of our Piano with Jonny members get a 20% off discount for Music Notes sheet music. Okay, so let's move on, guys. And you got your basic chords here. Let's groove. Let's groove on this. Why not? Check out the groove. Okay, we got some very cool chords in here. I want to start with the left hand and teach you these very gorgeous clusters, these jazz, what I call jazzy chords. If this is too hard for you guys, I'll show you some simplified versions, but you can always go to the beginner lesson where I teach you a much simpler way of playing this. In this intermediate advanced lesson, we're going to be using 10th intervals, okay? But don't be afraid, because you might be thinking, Johnny, I can't hit a 10th. It's okay. We're going to be using the sound of a 10th to accomplish this accompaniment pattern, okay? But the cool thing is it's a broken 10th. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Okay? So our first chord here is an F major chord with an added second. Okay? There's different ways people will write this chord. Some people will write it as an F add 2 or F2, but it's F, C, and G and A. Okay? Now, I have this written on beat 1. You can play it on beat 1, or you can just do the top notes on beat 1, like that. Okay? It's up to you. If you can't reach the 10th, just do this top set of notes. Okay? So this is going to be, actually, let's do it this way, guys. I think this is a better way of teaching. Let me teach you the full chords, and then we will look at the groove itself. Okay? First chord here is an F major chord, but we have added some notes to it. Okay? We've got the root, the 5th, the 9 and the 3rd in the left hand, the 7th, the 9th, the 3rd, and the 5th. Okay? This is our first chord, very, very beautiful chord, okay? If you want to play jazz music. Okay? We're going to hop up here for the melody. Okay? This is just a way you can color your melody here. The 5th and the 7th of the chord, like that. We're going to come up to an E7 here. Okay? This is a very jazzy way you can play an E7. We've got the root, the 3rd, and the 7th of the chord. This is the sharp 9. This is the flat 13 and the sharp 9. This is a very common combination in jazz to, when you're adding notes to a dominant chord, okay, is to use a sharp 9 and a flat 13 combination. Okay? You could also call this the sharp 5 if you wanted, but this is a very common combination. Okay? So memorize, just get this position in your hand. We're going to go here for this melody note, G, C, and E, like this. Okay, this is called an upper structure. If you guys want to learn more upper structures, I have a whole course on upper structures. Okay, I also teach these in the jazz intros and outros. You learn that upper structures in this course. Okay, so it's an E7, G, C, and E. That's a sharp 9, flat 13, and a root. We're going to harmonize this melody note with this upper structure chord. It's a B flat major chord. We've got the flat 9, the sharp 11, and the 7. Okay? This might be over some of your heads, and some of you might understand this a little bit. You might go, I sort of understand this idea of a sharp 11, a flat 9, sharp 9. These are called alterations. These are called altered dominant chords. They're the most colorful chords you get in jazz music. Okay? See what we're doing? It's like a C triad. That's a B flat major triad. All over this E7, root, 3rd, and 7. We're going to go to an A minor here. Very nice spread out A minor chord, A, G, C, G, C. Okay, very nice way to play a minor chord. Super jazzy, A flat 7, root 7, 3rd. This is a 13-9 combination, very common in jazz. We're using the 13 of the chord and the 9. Very cool way to play a dominant chord. You can learn more about how to color dominant chords in the Coloring Dominant Chords lesson at Piano with Johnny. This is what I call a Bill Evans chord. It's on the G minor, G, F, B flat, F, A, C. And then the G flat dominant 7. One of the most colorful chords in the book. Ah, love this one. It's kind of hard to reach, but it's root 7 on the G flat, 3rd, 13, 9, and the sharp 11 is way up there. If you can't reach the B flat down here, you could do that. Okay? Hey guys, this concludes the preview on the workshop. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Now, if you guys want to watch the full-length workshop, you can find it at the link below at pianowithjonny.com. And if you want to participate in these workshops, we do a live workshop every month for our members at Piano with Jonny. They can ask me questions during the lesson, and we have a ton of fun. Also, check out all of our content at Piano with Jonny. We have hundreds of piano lessons for beginner, intermediate, and advanced piano players in jazz, blues, boogie-woogie, improvisation, pop, rock, Latin, lots and lots of different styles. We have a huge selection of sheet music, we have backing tracks, we have the Piano with Jonny community where I interact with my students. We do live events every month. We do this workshop, we do a live Q&A where my students can ask me questions, and we have a ton of fun. So be sure to check out Piano with Jonny. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.